Good afternoon. I have an interesting thing I've been working on for about 2 days here. So what I've been doing is I've been developing this Fear Coma Experience, or FCE, architecture, which was, oh, by the way, I just got in the mail today the first hardback edition of my second book, Hell Exists But Only for the Living, Origins of Hell. So this is just a nice addition to the, and again, hardback, baby. So that's the first time I've gotten a hardback book. I never did a hardback edition of my first book. I'm going to do that soon. So as part of this Fear Coma Experience framework, what the concept is basically this, that for the entirety of human existence, going back 300,000 years, people have always had comas that you get from either injury or illness or what have you. People just go into comas. It's just a biological process that the body does, and the body says, nope, you're injured, you're offline until you heal. Now, the options are your body heals and you come out of the coma, or your body does not heal and you die. So there's these experiences that have always been categorized as near-death experiences, and they're labeled currently as distressing near-death experiences. So when I was writing my first book, I set those aside because they normally lacked a very particular element of information. No flatline death. So as far as I was concerned, if there's no flatline death, then your soul's not leaving your body, you're not going over to the other side. And this is where most of this imagery came from where people were saying it was like hell, and there's devils and demons and fire and danger and pursuit and entrapment and all of these things. So what happens in a coma? Your body goes offline, and from an evolutionary point of view, think about it, every animal on the planet understands fear. Okay, you can scare a dog, you can scare a cat, you can scare a chipmunk. It's built into our DNA for probably millions of years. And fear is primarily trying to motivate you to survive. In other words, here comes a lion. Oh crap, what do we do now? Run away, fight, flight, freeze. Those are the classics. So when your body goes offline, and let's say you're being attacked by an elephant or something, and you get stomped into the ground and you're in a coma, well, your brain is still firing. Your body can't respond anymore, but the brain goes, what are you doing? Get up, go, run, fight, do something about this. We're going to die if you don't move. That's where all of this fear imagery comes from, because your brain literally ramps it up to make it as scary as possible to get you to do something. Your brain doesn't know that the body's offline, ironically. So that's what I'm calling a fear coma experience, FCE. Not a distress. I'm not using distressing NDE anymore. That's a misnomer, or it's a mislabeling. But then there's an interesting thing that happens. It's quite possible, and this happens, it's rare, but it does happen. There are cases and there are situations where somebody goes into a coma, and then while they're hospitalized now, modern day typically, while they're in the hospital, they'll actually physically have a death associated there, an actual clinical death and a near-death experience. So then they go from being in hell, crossover, have the elements of the tunnel and the bright white light and the life review and telepathic communications and all of these things that indicate that it's a near-death experience. But then they get revived, and where do they go? Back into their body, back to hell. So what happens there? When this happens to someone, that the events, the way that they perceive it, that it becomes welded together. And today, this morning, I wasn't actually looking for this case. I was looking for another Fear Coma experience that had been mislabeled as a distressing ND. So I was going to say, okay, so this is what I expected to find. Here's a person who's talking about all of this fear imagery, and a lot of these sound like this. And then I had this terrible accident, and I went through the windshield of the car, and then I was hurt terribly. And then the NDE started, but without a clinical death. And then there's none of the classic NDE stuff involved. It's all fear-based. So that's a coma, okay? And it's just an account that's mislabeled as a near-death experience when it's really not. There's just no death there. So it's a fear coma experience. So that, I feel like that's a more proper labeling for that. And then the welded coma is when you have an FCE, or a fear coma experience, and then a near-death experience, and then back into the FCE. So then that becomes welded. Now, ran into Michelle Ledbetter. So she spoke at the IANDS conference last year. She's going to be there in a couple of weeks. I'm going to meet her there. And I stumbled into her. She's been on, as far as I can tell, at least 8 different podcasts. So I spent all day yesterday researching her cases. and her looking at the podcast. And first of all, let me just say a couple of things clearly. She's absolutely telling the truth. She's telling the story as she remembers it the best that she can. But this is common for these welded NDEs because it is impossible for the person who went through that to separate those out between the coma experience and the near-death experience. So that's part of it. It's always confusing. And it's easier for someone like me, who's looking at it from the outside, to go, hey, listen, I think this is what happened. So I spoke to Michelle for about an hour this morning. And here's an interesting part. I asked her about, did you actually have a clinical death? And she's like, and the funny thing was, in the 8 times that she had been interviewed by 8 different podcasts, not once was she asked that question. She laughed and she goes, what? Nobody's ever asked me that before. I'm like, okay. And said, did they tell you at the hospital that you actually at some time during the hospitalization or during the operation or what have you, that did you flatline at some point in time? And she said, honestly, she says, well, they might have told me and I might have just forgotten. If you remember, I had a pretty significant traumatic brain injury at the time. So it's like, oh, well, that makes sense. So after speaking to Michelle, she said she's going to reach out to the hospitals that treated her. There was 2 different hospitals in Colorado that she was going to reach out and obtain those records and then parse through it and look for exactly that. She's a nurse. She's a hospice nurse. So she deals with this stuff and she knows what she's looking for. And then we're going to carry on. So I wrote the first article that I've published on the Winter NDE website. And I'm doing this video and I'm going to do a series of shorts and stuff just because I'm talking more and more about this fear coma experience, near-death experience. Put the 2 together and you got a welded. That's the framework that I'm developing, and I'm looking for more cases to support that framework. Let me put that another way. I'm following the data, okay? And I'd like to put a call out there too for anybody who sees this, either the article or this long format video or a short, which I'm going to use the Opus Clips to make a short on this. If anybody sees something and says, what, I saw this case, shoot me the particulars, okay? Shoot me an email. There's on the website, there's lots of ways to contact me and all of the social media contacts. You can just send a comment and go, hey, what about this one? What about that one? And then I'll look at them one at a time. I'm looking to test my own framework. Now, I did 15 rounds of red team testing on before I published this book. In other words, the framework is pretty darn solid, okay? Based on logic and evidence and medical evidence and all of the different factors. I think it's absolutely solid. Personally, I'm not falling in love with my own conclusions here, but I am keeping a wide open mind. And it's important to note, too, that this entire book, this second book, was written because of pushback that I received after publishing the first book. And I just said, hell doesn't exist because it doesn't come up in the discussions, the accounts. And everybody came back and they were pushing on me about these distressing near-death experiences. So I went and took a hard look at them. And what I discovered was this whole fear coma experience architecture that fully believe that that's exactly where all that stuff comes from. Anyway, that's all I got for today, and I am going to put this out. Please remember to like, follow, share, comment, do all of the social media stuff. Check out the article on the website, and thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Have a fantastic day. Bye now.